file in MuleSoft. Now we are focusing on file. A computer file is a computer resource for recording data in a computer storage device, primarily identified by its file name. Just as words can be written to a paper, so can data be written to a computer files. Files can be shared with and transferred between computers and mobile devices via removable media networks or internet. Here you can see a single segment in flat file schemas. If you only working with one type of record, you only need to have a segment definition for that record type in your FFD. Here the composite is there, and elements are in composite, and again composite and elements are in segment here. Here you can see multiple segments. If you are working with the multiple types of records in the same transformation, you need to use a structure definition that control how these different records are combined. In most cases, you need to define a way to distinguish between different types of records. You do this by identifying tag value fields as part of the record definitions. The parser will check the content of the fields of each record to identify the record type and then see how it fits into defined structure. Here you can see composite and elements are in composite, and composite and elements are in the segment, and this is one segment and this is another segment. Here you can see multiple structures. If you have multiple structures or segment definitions in an FFD, when you apply your schema to a metadata description on the transform component, you need to specify which one you want to use. Here you can see a group and segments are in the group here, and here the composite and elements are in the composite, and composite and elements are in the segment here. Here the group and segments are in the group, and group and groups, and here the segment are in the structure, and there are other. This is one structure, this is another structure here. As an example, we can consider this one. This example read file using file configuration and relative path. The file connector 1.5 Mule 4 anypoint connector for file connector manages files and folders on a locally mounted file system. The connector's main features include ability to read files or fully list directory contents on demand, support for common file operations such as creating directories, reading, writing, copying, moving, renaming, deleting, and listing files, support for locking files, file matching functionality, design that is consistent with FTP connector and SFTP connector. Using anypoint connector for file connector, the transport can read a file at any point in the flow rather than only as a result of inbound endpoint polling in the Mule 3 implementation. The only required parameter for the read operation is the path to the file to be read. The path can be either full path to the file or relative path. The path uses the working directory value defined in the configuration reference by the config-ref parameter. In Anypoint Studio, you can set the path in the file path field, and XML use the path attribute file read statement to specify the path. If no configuration is referenced, the working directory default to the value of the user.home system property. If the system property is not set, the connector fails to initialize. This example reads a file using the file configuration and relative path. Here this is example. As an example, we can consider this. This is in data view. This uses read URL to read JSON content from your file. DataWave 4.4 here. DataWave is a programming language designed by MuleSoft for accessing and transforming data that travels through Mule applications. Mule runtime engine incorporates DataWave in several core components like transform and set payload, and which enables you to execute DataWave scripts and expressions in your Mule app. As an example 3, we can consider using Anypoint Studio to configure file connector 1.5 Mule 4 at the connector to your Mule project, at the file connector to your Mule project to automatically populate XML code with the connector's namespace and schema location, and add the required dependencies to the project pom.xml file. Step 1 here, in the Mule palette view, click Xsearch in the Exchange, and in the add dependencies, step 2, in the add dependencies to project window, type the file to search field, and in step 3, click file connector in available modules, and step 4, click add, and step 5, click finish. As an example 4, we are considering class file utils. File utils contains file utils in org.mule.runtime.core.api.util. File utils contains useful methods for dealing with files and directories. Now we are considering representation of file in Mule file connector Mule 4. Mule 4 provides the message structure of a payload and attributes which are the data moves around, making that payload file content. Attributes provide the object that contains metadata of the payload and the information such as file name, path size, timestamp, FTP connector, and SFTP connector. These attributes are named file attributes. Mule message specifies the encoding and MIME type, which describe the format in which the payload is represented. File attributes describe the file's encoding of and MIME type. Now we are considering configure a global element for the connection in using Anypoint Studio to configure file connector 1.5 Mule 4 in file connector 1 Mule 4. When you configure a connector, it's best to configure the global element that all instances of that connector in the app use case apps can use. Configuring a global element requires you to configure FTP server connection. To configure the global element for a file connector, follow the steps. Select the name of the connector in the Studio canvas. Select the operation in the Studio canvas. In the configuration screen for the operation, click the plus sign next to the connector configuration field to access the global element configuration fields. In the General tab, specify the connection information for the connector. Set the working directory as the root of every relative path used with this connector. If it is not provided, the value default to the value of the user home system property. If the system property is not set, connector failed to initialize. Set the host to specify the FTP server host, for example localhost 192.168.0.1. In the advanced tab, optionally specify the timeout configuration and reconnection strategy, and in the click test connection to confirm that Mule can connect with the specified server, and click OK. In the configuration XML editor, configuration file config look like this. Now we are considering add a namespace for the connector. In file connector XML and Maven support Mule 4 in file connector. This example shows how the namespace statement applies in the Mule XML block. Now we are considering read the file using file connector in file connect example Mule 4 in file connector. Using Anypoint connector for the file connector, the transport can read the file at any point in the flow rather than as a result of inbound endpoint polling in the Maven 3 implementation. Only required parameter for the read operation is the path to the file to be read. Path can be either full path to the file or a relative path. Path uses working directory value defined in the configuration, referenced by the config ref parameter. In Anypoint Studio, you can set the path in the path file path field. In XML, the path attributes in the file read element to specify the path. If no configuration is referenced, the working directory default to the value of the user.home system property. If the property is not set, the connector failed to initialize. The example reads a file using file configuration and a relative path. This example read a file using full path. In Studio, click the browse button to locate the file. For example, uses my file. In XML, use the path attribute to specify the path to the file. For example, path uses my file. Now we are considering troubleshoot Mule application issues in troubleshooting Mule file connector Mule 4 in file connector Mule 4. Sometimes you are not sure why the application is failing and you require a better understanding of what is going on in the app's interaction with the file system. To resolve this error, use configuration file to increase the logging level on the server side. Try to replicate the issue using a file client, for example, CyberDuck or FileZilla. If the issue also occurred in these clients, then it is likely that the issue is not related to the Mule app. It's better get better and more detailed logs on the Mule app side by enabling verbose logging for file connector for JSCH driver. Access Anypoint Studio and navigate to Package Explorer view. Open your application's project name. Open source main resources path folder. Open log4j2.xml file inside the folder. If the following line is already in the log4j2.xml file, uncomment it to enable it, otherwise add it. Add the following argument to run the configuration. Try to minimize or remove unnecessary data view transformations. You could even use hard-coded data to minimize the app's complexity and determine whether the issue is with the interaction between the app and the file system. For additional information about enabling verbose logging for SDK component in the Mule application, see the troubleshooting SDK component in the documentation. Now we are considering default configuration in configurations in file connector reference Mule 4 in file connector Mule 4. This is a parameter name here. The name for this configuration connectors reference the configuration with this name. Now we are considering copy file, the file in file operations in toolbox in RPA build in RPA. This section step copies a file from one directory to another. If the file to be copied, if not available or copied file is already located in the destination folder, an error message will interrupt the workflow. Now we are considering create file in file operations in toolbox in RPA build in RPA. Create file is used to create an empty file at the specified path. Now we are considering delete file in file operations in toolbox in RPA build in RPA. Delete file will delete the file located in the specified path. Action step can be used, for example, to delete files which are generated within the workflow. If the file for deletion does not exist, then the action step does not terminate the workflow into an error. There is, however, an option that enables the generation of an error message in the event of non-existent file. Now we are considering file operations, extract images from PDF file in file operations in toolbox in RPA builder in RPA. With this action, you can extract images from a PDF file. Now we are considering file check in file operations in toolbox in RPA builder in RPA. File check action step allows you to check whether a file exists or not. You can evaluate result using file check. file select succeeded variable and use it in the larger stages of the workflow. Now we are considering get file info in file operations in toolbox in RPA builder in RPA. Get file info fetches information about the file at a specific path, and you can retrieve the following information: date created, date modified, owner, when the file was last accessed. The information fetched is saved in the appropriate variable for further processing. Dates are written in UTC, coordinated universal time formats as follows: y mm-dd th:/mm:/ss z. Now we are considering iterate over files in file operations in toolbox in RPA build in RPA. The iterate over files action step perform various action steps on a specified number of files. Drag the action steps to be accessed. Drag the action step to be processed into the gray area labeled drop items here using a drag and drop. The action step placed there will be processed from top to bottom in the order specified. This means that action steps for processing will be applied to all files located in the folder depending on the settings, its subfolders. It is possible to set various parameters such as maximum number of files to be processed. Now we are considering move file in file operation in toolbox in RPA build in RPA. This action step moves the file from one directory to another. If the file to be moved, if not available, or moved file is already located in the destination folder, an error message will interrupt the workflow. Now we are considering read from a text file. In read from a text file in file operation in toolbox in RPA build in RPA. Read from a text file action step allows you to read from a text file and use the read mode to specify which part of the file is to be read. The button in the workflow, the read mode that is presently active in the brackets after name of the action step. In the example above, whole life, there is an option to determine whether the text should be deleted after reading. Now we are considering read PDF file in file operations in toolbox in RPA build in RPA. With the read PDF file action step, you can read the text from the PDF file. Now we are considering rename file in the file operation in toolbox in the RPA build in RPA. This action renames a file, and if it's a file, if the rename file already exists in the destination folder, workflow is interrupted in the error message. Now we are considering write to a text file in the file operation in the toolbox in the RPA build in RPA. Write to a text file, write to a plain text file with the .txt as the only support file format. You can specify if you want to write to text file or overwriting existing text in a file or create a new file. Now we are considering import a file or a content of a zip file that is stored in your computer if you are using a text editor. In procedures, in import file into an API fragment project in API design in design center. Click the gear icon in the top of left top right corner of the next editor and select the import, and then select in the import dialog select file or zip. Now we are considering file multipart in dw module multipart in data view reference in data view. This is the file. This is file and name, path, mime, and file name. Create a multipart data structure from a resource file. This version of file function accepts as argument an object containing key value pairs, enabling you to enter key value pairs in any order, for example here. Now we are considering read from Excel file in Excel operations in toolbox in RPA. Use the read from Excel file action step to read the content of an Excel file. The result will be saved as a string or an array, which you can use as outbound variable in subsequent action steps. The read from Excel file action step can only be used inside an Excel session. Now we are considering recalculate Excel file in Excel operations in toolbox in RPA. Recalculate Excel file action step can be used to recalculate an Excel sheet. If the value has subsequently changed, the values in the Excel sheet are updated. To be able to continue working with the new values, they must be read out with the read from Excel file action step. With the action step recalculate action file, you can determine exactly where the recalculation should take place in the workflow. Recalculation is documented in the workflow result. Read from the Excel file action step can only be used to inside the Excel session. Specify the source and destination file in the Excel session. Please note that operation mode that you have selected in the Excel session, read and write to the same file the recalculation is performed on the selected Excel sheet. Read from the source and write to a different file. Recalculation is only performed in the selected destination file. Read only, the action step cannot be executed in read only mode. Now we are considering save Excel file in Excel operations in toolbox in RPA. Use the save Excel file step to save the changes to the Excel file being modified inside the Excel session in any point of the execution. For example, saving Excel file after loop operation serves as a way to prevent lost data in case workflow execution is stopped because of an unknown error. Excel session automatically saves the file at the end of this execution. The save Excel file action step works only inside an Excel session. Specify file to modify the Excel session. Save Excel file cannot save the file if the Excel session opens the file in read-only mode. Now we are considering write to Excel file in Excel operation in toolbox in RPA. Use write to Excel action step if you want to write the content you have read from the Excel file using read from Excel file action step either to same or different destination file. The write to Excel file action step can only be used inside an Excel session. Specify the destination file in the Excel session. Now we are considering imported configuration files in modularized configuration file in common development strategies in best practices in develop Mule applications in Mule runtime. Mule has special import component for importing configuration file into other files. This component takes a file parameter which contains the reference to the desired configuration file. The other example this following example shows a main configuration file that imports 3 other configuration elements. Global dash configuration, admin dash config, global configuration.xml and admin config.xml and audit flows.xml here. Now we are considering single segment in flat file schemas in language guide in data view. This is a simple schema with only one segment. The example above simply define list of elements within single segment. It has no composites to group them into. Here is another example. Note that simplified forms are only for convenience. You can use the segments key even if you only have a single child segment definition. Now we are considering distributed file pooling in advanced Mule concepts in Mule runtime. Some connectors such as a file connector or FTP connector, poll directions directories and read certain files as they are created in directory fold. These files can reside on a remote file system, including file systems of nodes belongs to a Mule high availability HA cluster. In Mule 4, distributed file pooling makes it possible to pool files in all cluster nodes. Enabled by default, this feature is used by the following connectors: file connector, FTP connector, SFTP connector. You can configure connectors to only pull from the primary node at primary node only, which ignores the default setting set by the Mule runtime engine. This feature is only available in Mule 4.x. Now we are considering catalog descriptor line in creating or updating descriptor files manually in cataloging auto catalog API using API catalog CLI in Exchange. The descriptor file must start with the following line. The descriptor version corresponds with the version of the API catalog CLI that you are running. The following example shows the required starting line for API catalog CLI 1.0.0. Now we are considering importing a file at a design time in file control loop, in file control, in glossary, in RPA. When you select a read file now, the wizard shows the following configuration options. Click import file to select the file to import. RPA builder then reads and analyzes the file and displays the content preview in the file content preview section of the wizard. The file content preview section enables you to apply filters to each column by clicking the filter button. When you enter the text in the filter field, preview the filters out all rows that do not contain the specified text. Select use regress to use regular expression instead of plain text when applying filters. You drop down next to each column name to change the type of column content. Now we are considering migrating file connector. File connector in migrate connectors in Mule 4 for Mule 3 users in Mule runtime. In Mule 3, all transport configurations are set under the top level element called file::connector. By default, the file connector sets auto deletion, streaming, and validation of the connector to true. Here is the Mule 3 example default file configuration. The connector configuration also provides the settings for reading, writing, and moving files among many others. The next example shows the most of the Mule 3 settings available in the file connector here. Here the Mule 3 example available file connection settings here. In Mule 4, the file :config is the top level element for the connection configuration, and file::connection is the child element for the connection related settings. Here the Mule 4 examples. The working dir allows to specify the path to which all other paths are relative to. If not specified, the user home directory will be used. Note that the Mule 3 work directory is used when moving in input files before processing them. Default write encoding identify the character encoding to use for writing. You can override this global configuration with the file operation such as write. All other Mule 3 config parameters are no longer needed since they were either replaced by parameters in the new connectors operation, so they were rendered needless by the new connector model. Now we are considering the default root file in in root files in API specification projects in text editor, in root files in projects in the text editor, in the API designer, in API design in a design center. When you create the API specification project, file that is created by the default is set to be the root file. Here the the name of the RAML API specification project is orders API. Here the for example, here the default file which is named orders-api.raml and is set as the root file, because the every API specification project must have the root file. Here you can see move transformation to separate files in transform message component in Studio. To export the data view code to a .dwl file, click on the edit current target and select file radio button, and type the name for your .dwl file and click OK. Here now we are considering edit to API specification project exchange file in API sync in Studio. To edit to exchange .json file, select it from your API specification project in your project explorer view, and use the editor to update the values of your exchange.json file. Now we are considering add policy implementation files to publish policy definition in publish assets in Exchange. When a policy definition asset is published in Exchange, the asset details page displays the pending flag next to implementation. In the left navigation bar, the flag indicates that the policy implementation has not been added. Add the policy implementation files to the policy definition to enable the policy to be available in runtime. Required implementation files are binary, such as WebAssembly, WASM file for Flex Gateway, or jar file for Mule for runtime, and YAML metadata. Before adding the policy implementation file, ensure that the policy definition asset is the stable state. To add the policy implementation file in Exchange, select the policy asset to open the asset details page. Click the implementation in the left navigation bar. Click add implementation. Enter the name for the implementation. Choose file. Click choose file to select the jar or WebAssembly file. Click choose file to select the YAML file. Click edit to edit the group ID, asset ID, version, and API version. Click advanced and click advanced. Exchange generate a group ID, asset ID, and version. You can change these values. You can also change the API asset version and API version separately. The advanced settings are most often used to change the asset version. Click add implementation. The implementation displays in the manage implementation table. From this table, manage implementation versions of the policy asset. See the manage versions for more information in the documentation. Here you can see move transformation to separate files in Anypoint Studio in Mule Runtime 4.5. By default, data view code for transform message component is expressed inline within your Mule XML file. You can instead keep each in a separate file .dwl, and you have your XML reference them. These files are packaged with your Mule application when built. To export the data view code to a .dwl file, click edit current target button here, and select the file radio button. Type a name for your DWL file and click OK. File is created under source main resources folder in your project containing your data view code. Add policy implementation files to published policy definition in published assets in Exchange. When a policy definition asset is published in Exchange, the asset details page displays the pending flag to the implementation in the left navigation bar. The flag indicates the policy implementation has not been added. Add the policy implementation file to the policy definition to enable the policy to be available in runtime. Required implementation files are binary files such as WebAssembly, WASM, file to the Flex Gateway, or jar for Mule for runtime, and WAML metadata file. Before adding the policy implementation file, ensure that the policy definition assets is in the stable state. To add the policy implementation file, in Exchange, select the policy assets to open the asset details page. Click implementation in the left navigation bar. Click add implementation. Enter the name for implementation. Click choose to select the jar or WebAssembly file. Click choose to select the YAML file. Click edit group ID, asset ID, version, and API version. Click advanced. Click add implementation. API catalog create descriptor in create a descriptor file. Creating or updating descriptor files using the CLI. Auto catalog API using API catalog CLI. API catalog create descriptor. This command accept the following tags: d -- file equal file, the default catalog.yml, the name and location in which you to save the generated descriptor file, -- external, generate an exchange.json file for each API described in the descriptor file, and add the reference to each of these descriptor your file using ref tag in the project select section. To create a descriptor file using CLI, navigate the directory path that contains the API you want to catalog. Run the API catalog create descriptor command. Following example, create a descriptor file called my descriptor.yml in the current path. Example output that is written to the descriptor file is here. If you are using -- external flag in an external extend.json file is generated for each of your APIs, and descriptor file has references to each of those shown in the following example here. Example output that is returned to the descriptor file here. Projects here. In presence and contents of this designated descriptor file affect the result of the command as follows: no file or empty file. The command discovers the API and writes its result to the standard output and to the file name catalog.yml. If the file existing file with the content, command failed and shows an error message that says the descriptor file already exists. Now we are considering an example of reading a flat file. In read and write the flat file mule in data view examples in data view 2.5. The following example application consists of a scheduler component that triggered the flow, a file read operation that read the flat file from the specified path, and a transfer message component transform the content read from the flat file to JSON format, and logo component that outputs the current payload. Here the application.xml file and section of application.xml file. Note that the file read operation configure the following attributes. A path to the flat file to read. Output MIME type. Output MIME type document content of, in this case, application/flat file. Schema path refer to the property that specified the path to flat file schema.fd file. After the execution, the example application generates the following output here. And this is section of the output. Here you can see the procedure in create and publish an API specification of fragment from an external file in API design in Design Center. In the project page Design Center, click the create new button and click the import from file. Specify a name to specify a name to give to the import project. Click choose, then browse your file system for you want to import. You can create a new project from the following file type: JSON, RML, YAML, a zip file that contains an existing project. click import as, then choose either API specification or API fragment. API designer opens the API specification or fragment in the new project using a text editor. API designer uses the existing file name, or for each file of the project you can change these names as necessary. Now we are considering configure the read operation in Studio in read the file using SFTP connector example mule4, in read the file in SFTP connector 2.0 and SFTP connect examples. To add and configure read operation in Studio, follow these steps. In the Mule palette view, search for SFTP and select the read operation. Drag the read operation into the Studio canvas. In general tab of the operation configuration, click the plus sign next to the connector configuration field to access the global element configuration field. Specify the connection information and click OK. In the general tab, set the file path field to the path of the file to read, for example hash path. In the advanced tab, set the MIME type field to application/XML and the encoding field to ISO 10646/Unicode UTF-8. Following screenshot shows the read operation configuration. In the XML editor, set up in the SFTP :read configuration look like this. Here you can see import API specifications in Studio 7.15. Import a specification from the local file. Here it is not possible to add the local API specification to an existing Mule project. In the taskbar at the top of the any point the Studio display, select file, then new, then Mule project. Type a name for your project. Select the Mule runtime engine version. In API specification section, select from designer center or local files tab. In the location field, type a location of your local API. You click the button and select browse files. You can import either RML file or an entire .zip file bundle if your API has schemas and example, and click finish. The Mule configuration file in Mule runtime 4.5. Following is an example of a sample Mule configuration file for an application. And this is segment. Here the example specify flat file schema in flat file format in supported data formats in data view 2.5. This example shows the data view script that outputs the data in a flat file format. It uses the schema path and the structure indent writer properties. Here you can see a configure archive operation in archiving and extracting files in compression mode 2.2. Given an input stream payload, archive operation enables you to compress all the payload entries into a new archive file in the zip format. The operation received a map and then identify the values to compress. Then the operation received an entry which is placed inside the compressed archive file with the entry name you provide in the data view compression. In Studio, drag the archive operation into your flow. In set entries data view script, defining each name of the entry compressed as the key and the content of the entry as its value. In the configuration.xml editor, configuration look like this. The resulting archives contain the three entries: summary.pdf located at the root level, and result underscore 001.pdf and result underscore 002.pdf located in the details directory. Note that the slash forward in the same of the entry name of the entry, for example detail for set result underscore 001.pdf, indicates the directory operation. All names are introspected to create directories inside the archive. If you create the input to archive operation using data view expression, the data view expression must output an object used to build the Java map object. Define unique keys to add the entire object to the archive. Here the create mule application in inserting large file content into table in database connect examples in database connector 1.14. Follow the steps to create the mule application. In Studio, drag the HTTP listener source to the canvas. Click the plus sign next to the connector configuration field to configure the HTTP global connection. Configure the HTTP global connection and click OK. Set path to read insert. Drag the logo component to the right of the HTTP listener source. Set message to starting large club reading. Drag the file connector read operation to the right of the connector logger component. In the general tab of the operation configuration screen, click the plus sign next to the connector configuration field to access the global element configuration field. Set working directory to a /directory containing /files to read the file property. Click OK. Set file path to awesome file.json. In the MIME type tab, set MIME type to application /octet stream. Drag another logger component to the right of the read operation. Set display name large club content on flow. Drag the database connector insert operation to the right of the second logger component. Click the plus sign next to the connector configuration field to configure the database global connection. Configure the database connection and click OK. Set the SQL query text to insert auto awesome club data values payload. The SQL text insert a new record with the file content in the tab. Set input parameters to expression. Drag another logo component to the right of the insert operation. Set display name to large club content inserted. Here the SQL text insert a new record with the file content in the table. Here input parameters here, and they drag another logo component to the right of the insert operation. Set display name large club content inserted. Set message to the compression payload. Save and run the mule applications. Test the app using the following curl command in your terminal: curl localhost /8081/read-insert. Configure the read operation in Studio. Read file using FTP connect example in FTP connect examples and FTP in FTP connector 1.4. To add and configure the read operation in Studio, follow the steps. In the Mule palette, search for FTP and select read operation. Drag and read operation into Studio canvas. In the general tab of the component configuration screen, click the plus sign next to the connector configuration field to access the global element configuration. Specify the connection information and click OK. In the general tab, set file path to path of the file to read the for example hash path. In the MIME type tab, set MIME type application /XML in and read and set encoding to ISO 10646/Unicode UTF-8. In the configuration XML editor, the FTP :read configuration look like this. Order property in policy tag. Configuration and definition file in the difference in custom policies in Mule 3 in Mule Gateway. You can set the order execution policy using order property. However, settings in order policy execution in a message processor takes procedure over settings order or the order execution of the policy tag. Set the order to integer greater than 2 because the order values 0 to 2 are reserved for cost, throttling, and rate limited parameters. Respectively, these policies must be execute before others. Following examples show how to set order property in policy tag. Here we are considering steps to follow in Flow Designer in deploy a Mule application from Runtime Manager to Cloud Hub by using a Jar file. In deploy a Mule application in Flow Designer in Design Center. Ensure that the project is free of errors. Export your project by clicking the three dots in the top right corner of the canvas and select export. Three dots are to the right of the button that is labeled within a down arrow. Export option is at the bottom of the menu. Select export Mule application and click export. A jar file containing a copy of your Mule app is downloaded to the default location on your computer. Now we are considering configure compress operation in compressing and decompressing a single file in compression module 2.2. Given an input stream payload, compress operation enables you to compress the stream and return a new compressed stream of bits. You can then store the compressed stream of bits in a file system or transfer it to another system. In Studio, drag the compress operation to follow. Set content to your input stream payload to compress. Set compressor to gzip compressor or zip compressor strategy. In the configuration XML editor, configuration look like this. Here you can see a lookup data in an XML XLXX files in data view examples in data view. This data view example uses a filter function to return only the rows of an XLXX file. Input input file that contains a specified value. Before you can begin, note the 2.x versions of the data view are used by the Mule 4 apps. For data view in Mule 3 apps, you refer the data view version 1.2 examples in the documentation. For other data view versions, you can use the version selector in the data view table of the content. By default, the files over 1.5 MB are stored on a disk. Smaller files are stored in memory. Following data view script reads the XLXX file and returns the filtered data from it. It assumes that its spreadsheet name ourbugs.xlsx contains the data on the bugs assigned to the all members of the team, including assignee named Fred M. Data view script is here. The script passes class path colon ourbugs class path colon / ourbugs.xlsx application / xlsx output application / JSON. My input data filter entry index entry dot assignee / fredname. Script the script passes for class path colon ourbugs dot xlsx to the read URL function to read the file from the Studio project directory source main resources. It will result in a data view my input. The script select the sheet named data. From the Excel SX file, then filters out all the records except one where the assignee columns contain the value Fred M. It returns the result in an array of JSON object, for example here. Using the same data view script in this previous example, next example writes the result to the filter expression to a file fredbugs.json. The example is the configuration XML from my project in the studio. The XML configuration in studio is like this. The scheduler triggers here the triggers the flow to execute the next component transform message. The transform message component transform provide the data view script to return all records from data sheet for which the assignee column contains the value Fred. And transform the binary Excel SX input to JSON output. The write operation, the write operation file write from the file connector received the JSON payload from the E transform and write it to the file called fredbugs.json. Now we are considering set passing text file attachment as body language body message in email connector email connector 1.7. When endpoint connector for email connector receive the message without a body and only an attachment file with content type as text, the attachment file is not processed as separate file. Instead, the file is included main message body as plain text. Mule apps can use this behavior to receive the data in the message body instead of as an attachment file. To change the behavior of passing attachment text file when the file is in the only content in the message, set system property passing .text.attachment.as.body to either of these values. True default pursue the previous behavior and convert the text file attachment in the body message. False add the attachment text file to the attachment list in the payload. To learn how to set system properties in Anypoint Studio or for an on-premises deployment, refer to system properties documentation. Now we are considering export app data to a CSV file use data dashboards in monitoring. Built in a custom dashboards, you can export app data to see a CSV file which you can use in other application. Data export works on individual chart level. So only data in the specified chart is exported. When you apply a filter to a dashboard, the exported data includes only the data included in the filter you set. For example, if you apply the time period filter, only the data for that time period is exported. This feature requires a Titanium subscription. Log into the endpoint platform. In the navigation bar or the main endpoint platform screen, click monitoring. In the endpoint platform monitoring navigation menu, click the built-in dashboard or custom dashboards. Select the application for which the download the data. Specify the time range for data to download. In the chart containing the data data and containing the data to download, click the three vertical dots in the top right of the chart and select export CSV. In the export CSV dialog, specify the way to format the data. In the mode, select the format for the data. Series as rows, format the data in rows in the CSV file, for example, and series as columns, format the data as the columns in the CSV file, for example. And in In datetime format, enter the values to specify the datetime format. For example, YYY, MM, and then DDT, HH, then SSZ. Click export. The CSV file download automatically in the browser. Now we are considering source in the now we are considering an example in the multipart colon file in mod example in DW colon module colon multipart module colon multipart colon file in data view reference in data view 2.4. This example create a multipart part from the file accessible to the data view function. The file name is orders.xml and is located in the Mule application / source main resources. The file function locates the external orders.xml file and uses the key value pairs to indicate the various parameters needed to build the multipart part. The name can be anything, but usually coincidence the required parameters needed by the receiving server that accept the multipart payload. Path is set to orders.xml, which is the path and name for the orders.xml. The file is located on the multipart part. The MIME parameter specify the correct MIME type for the file. In this case, it's application /xml. The file name can be changed to any value. It can be different from the actual input file name. Note the output of this example is not compatible with the multipart form dash data of this example is not compatible with the data and output type because of it's just one part of the multipart structure. Create a valid multipart form data output. Use the multipart colon form function with one or more multipart files and or fields. Source this is the source and the input the file created called orders.xml located in the source main resources with the following content. This is the output. And here the etc. here is going like that. And etc. Now we are considering lookup data in CSV file Mule in data view examples in data view 2.5. In this data view example uses the filter with map to look up the CSV file and return the country code for each calling code found in the input array of the phone numbers. Before you begin, note that 2.x versions of the data view are used by the Mule 4 app. For data view in Mule 3 apps, refer data view version 1.2 examples in the documentation. For other data view versions, you can use the version selector in the data view table of contents. Following JSON payload is provided as an array of phone numbers into the data view script. The value in the variable country codes is a CSV file that maps the codes to the country codes. The following data view script reads the each phone number in the payload and uses the filter function to search for calling code within the Mule variable country code that matches the calling code in the phone number. then the map function gets the country code that correspond to the calling code, and returns the result to the array of JSON objects. Correspond to calling code returns the result of to an array of JSON objects. The data view script is here. The sample output is in JSON here. Now we are considering properties in read from text file in file operations in toolbox in RPA Builder 6.2. Delete lines after read the file operation here. Specify whether the text should be deleted after it is read. As an exception example, we can consider this one occurred in the environment with file connector. org.mule.api.default mule exception, fail to move file source file to destination file. The file might already exist. As an error example, we can consider throw file colon illegal underscore path in the environment with file connector. This is the create parent directory property is set to false, and neither the target path nor its parent exist.